you see it for the first time, you know it's very large and you're very impressed with what you see.
On a technical level, we are probably amongst the most technically advanced vessels and operationally speaking as well in the world, yes. It's unique.
It is a ship with a soul, so you kind of grow fond of it. Once you learn to know the Skagerrak, you love her.
This is the story of 3 amazing boats. They all sail around the world to accomplish some surprising missions. We're going to tell you the story of the crews who work on these steel monsters and who live an extraordinary life. We'll board the Geo Challenger, nicknamed the Sea Ultrasonograph, off Egypt. This boat is a real floating factory which detects the presence of gas and oil in the seabed. Then we'll fly to Manhattan, where the biggest cable ship in the world, a French ship called the Skagerrak, is about to bury 19 kilometers of electric cables in the Long Island Sound. This trip begins on the west coast of Scotland. It's 7 a.m. and it's time for Callum Macaulay to kiss his triplets goodbye and set sail.
That's nice, isn't it? Right. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye. 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 Just joining the boat for the next 28 days. You get to see a lot of the country and places, some of the lighthouses that you go to, some people would never see in a lifetime, and we get to go there in a helicopter.
Callum is a quartermaster, that's a boatswain, on the Pharos, which means lighthouse in Greek. This unique, powerful ship, which looks like a high-sea tugboat, is the flagship for Scottish lighthouses and beacons. Based in the port of Oban, it's specialized in the maintenance of everything linked to navigation in this particularly inhospitable coastal zone. The Sentry of the Sea of the Hebrides is heading south, doing 14 knots. The ship is literally cleaving through the waves. The Pharos was built several months ago in Poland, but Jan, the chief engineer, has already lost count of the miles the ship has covered.
We have 2 propellers at the back, so they're just like big outboard engines really, that will rotate through 360 degrees. Then at the front we've got 2 transverse thrusters that will stop the ship moving side to side. And with the other ones, they can set it up so the ship stays exactly where it's required. That they will oppose sea and wind up to a certain degree to hold us exactly in the position we need to work buoys or whatever other task we're required to do.
I went over to Poland to do buoy trials. I had not seen this ship, and we joined with a pilot. A pilot ship took us out to join this, and when you see it for the very first time, it's huge compared to what we're used to working with. When you see it for the first time, you know it's very large, and you're very impressed with what you see.
We leave the Pharos in the rough Scottish seas to go to the north of Egypt, where another kind of crew is expecting us on an ultra-modern ship. Farewell Alexandria and the arid coasts of northern Egypt. we are going after a boat which nearly never stops. On the helicopter, which carries part of the crew of the Geo Challenger, there is one of the managers of this floating factory, Bruno de Ver.
The first step is for the crew to board the boat. This is when they get back to work. They're in another state of mind. We must forget about holidays and the outside world and concentrate on getting on board and taking over from the crew which is already there. We then have to become familiar with the mission and get into the rhythm. They'll know in a few minutes if they're going to be on day shift or night shift. This will set the pace for their next 5 weeks. They'll have to get back to their jobs and their old habits.
We can soon see long trails in the wake of the boat. Just like a giant trawler, the Geo Challenger tows a dozen cables packed with high-tech equipment. It is nicknamed the Sea Ultrasonograph. The function of a seismic ship is to record a sound wave propagated by a number of air cannons. The echoes of these underwater explosions are then captured by tiny microphones, fitted in cables which are a few kilometers long. All the data collected in the sea is then processed on the boat.
Stay out here for years. And the closest equivalence would be a nuclear submarine that stays submerged for 3 months. Well, we stay out here for 18 months. So I would say, operationally speaking and on a technical level, we are probably amongst the most technically advanced vessels and operationally speaking as well in the world, yes. It's unique.
On your right, you can see the Geo Challenger. We're getting near it. The pilot just maneuvered so that we can now land on the platform.
Several times a year, Bruno de Ver leaves the offices of the General Geophysics Company in Paris to board the Geo Challenger in order to catch up on the operations in progress.
Hello, Captain. How are you? Fine, thank you.
The oil magnates who sponsor this new seismic exploration are convinced that there is oil somewhere off Alexandria. But right now, all the information regarding the boating area is strictly confidential.
On est en train de travailler surtout sur cette zone-là qu'on va.
We're especially concentrating on these zones. We're going to scrape this zone and do a complete scan of the area. We'll then give the results to the oil company, who with its geologists and geophysicists will direct the drilling according to the results. As far as we're concerned, our priority is the quality of the data that is given to the client, which will enable him to have the most accurate picture of the subsoil and therefore decide to drill or not according to the zone.
In order to understand the mission of this unique ship, let's go to the stern of the boat with Jan, the seismic operations manager on the Geo Challenger.
The seismic theory is quite easy to understand, actually. If you have a wife or a girlfriend that's pregnant, they will go to the doctor and get an ultrasound of their stomach, and you can actually see the baby. And in this case here, well, it's just multiplied by 1 million. So whereas the baby is only 20 centimeters inside the woman, here we are looking at 20 kilometers of depth into the ground, into the structures below us, and we are trying to locate the oil and gas so that eventually we'll be able to tank our cars and drive around Champs-Élysées.
All the data collected in the sea is then processed by a small team of engineers in order to provide a perfect picture of the subsoil. And in certain cases, it reveals some precious information on the nature of the seabed, for those who are able to interpret it. While the Geo Challenger scrapes the Mediterranean, let's head toward the south of Norway, where there's an incredible factory. We have arranged to meet Patrick Bart at the far end of the Halden Fjord, which is the port of registry of the Skagerrak.
Cablemen can't stop touching the cables, even when there's tar on them. It's a bit of a nightmare, but never mind, it's all good stuff.
The underwater cable manufacturing plant looks like a giant weaving mill. The sole of the cable, the copper wires, intertwine before being covered in plastic, tar, and rope. This creates a thick sheath which is supposed to protect the cable from underwater aggression.
It's almost impossible to go and repair a cable or to join two cables at the bottom of the sea. So we make one long cable. For instance, for the cable we're going to lay to New York, there were 3 cables, because there will be 3 cables laid side by side, and each cable is over 19 kilometers long. It's an average length for that kind of factory. For your information, last year we made a cable which was 156 kilometers long. So making one long cable with not a single defect is probably the most difficult thing to do.
Once it's stored in the factory, it will take another week before the long copper snakes wind around the revolving table on the main deck of the Skagerrak. This cable ship is the only one capable of loading 50 kilometers of underwater cable. The Skagerrak can carry 7,000 tons of cable. With all this weight on it, the ship will take more than a month to cross the Atlantic and to get to the east coast of the United States. We're now back on the Pharos, in a coastal area where there are about 200 lighthouses. But there are no more keepers to look after these buildings, which have been eaten into by the swell and the strong winds. The increasing sea traffic in the area means there are more and more buoys and beacons in the sea. All these extra high-tech machines have to be constantly repaired or replaced. The Pharos is a sort of floating workshop. There are 30 people aboard, mechanics, welders, crane drivers. These sailors take turns every 5 weeks. On the deck, Callum is checking that everything is going as planned.
Depending on where the buoys are, for as far as tide and weather, some of them get a lot more wear and tear than others. Some of them, if they're in quiet, sort of sheltered waters, the chain will last a lot longer. But as I say, if they're in a tidal area or bad weather, they need to be changed.
The helicopter of the lighthouses and beacons just landed at the bow of the Pharos. On the bridge, Alan, the captain, and Rob, the pilot, are analyzing the weather map. There's a big storm on its way.
I'll get back to you because you'll be about, by the time I get back, you'll be about here. Won't you? Come back into
We got an email this morning from the monitor centre in Edinburgh. We have a monitor centre who electronically monitors all the lighthouses, and there was a signal that the battery voltage was low at Skagerrak, so they've sent an email now to say that there's a problem there, so they need to have some technicians. So we need to get the helicopter out there. The weather governs everything. We have to get the forecast every day before we set out and decide what to do.
Just as it exits the natural shelter created by a string of islands, the Pharos runs into a major squall. Within a few minutes, the sea becomes very rough. This may compromise today's mission. Nevertheless, the helicopter takes off. It's on its way to the Skagerrak. This lighthouse is considered to be one of the most beautiful in the world, from an architectural standpoint. But it's also one of the most difficult to get to. Rob, who is in control of the helicopter and winds reaching over 80 kilometers an hour, is going to try everything he can to land. In vain.
It's a difficult lighthouse to land at. The helipad is at sea level and it's a quite exposed part of the coastline. When we get in there, you've got to be very careful with big Atlantic rollers coming in, heavy seas. So the window of opportunity to get on the Skagerrak is limited. It's also a tidal landing site, so it's really only suitable to land on at low tide. And as long as the sea state is calm, you'll get the boys on.
After 26 years of service in Scottish lighthouses and beacons, Alan, the captain, still has to improvise when a mission is postponed. In Egypt, on the Geo Challenger, 45 crew members and a dozen different nationalities take turns night and day. Nicolas is part of the team of young scientists. He is from Wesson Island. He spends 5 weeks on board and 5 weeks at home.
Usually, people say things like, "You earn a lot of cash." It's often the first thing they ask me. And then they say, "You earn a lot of cash." But they don't really care about my job. In Wesson, there are a lot of merchant sailors, so they don't really ask people, "What's your job?" If you're a sailor, you're a sailor, period. But I'm not a sailor, I'm a scientist. Because in Wesson, a lot of people think he's a sailor, but he didn't go to marine school. It's not normal. So I'm just a scientist on a boat, and that's it.
That's it. But sometimes, at the stern of the ship, the cables get tangled or even break. They must then find where the problem is coming from in this extremely long device. The production comes to a standstill, and the ambiance gets very tense.
We're pulling along several $1 million worth of equipment in the water on a device that's 1 kilometer wide by 6 or 7 kilometers long. It's like a giant rake which trails along, so there is obviously a risk of it getting caught by fishing nets or any floating object, even a boat. These are the biggest threats. That's why we have some kind of visual support all around us, just like the one you can see at the bottom. These boats work for us. They sail around the ship. They watch everything and are in permanent contact with the bridge in order to move away from our device and therefore avoid breaking the cables we pull along, the streamers in which are placed the hydrophones. They prevent us from ruining our equipment.
Each hour that goes by means millions of dollars and even perhaps a contract thrown into the sea. In the navigation room, they're trying to find a solution as quickly as possible.
It's much better to take 5 minutes more, 10 minutes more, to think it through, and then you talk. Everybody knows what's going on. That makes it faster, there's less mistakes, and it's safer. Especially the safety we are concerned about safety because the equipment that we are towing is under a lot of strain, you know, many tons. So if something breaks, we have to make sure that nobody gets hurt.
Nicolas, the scientist from Ouessant, just got back to work on the deck. He knows that he cannot make the slightest mistake.
All the cables are in full tension here. There's a lot of tension on the paravanes on both sides. It can easily reach 30 or 35 tons when there is a bit of wind or when there are waves. Everything can be dangerous, actually. If you aren't careful, somebody can fall into the water. There have already been some accidents. For example, a major accident would be to have a finger cut off or to break a bone if you're not really paying attention to everything.
Okay, thank you.
They will need 3 days and 3 nights to pull these never-ending cables up. They have to pull everything back on board, check everything, and repair the broken part in order to put the device and the air cannons back into the water. "72 hours of hard work before being able to relax." The captain and the skipper are once again smiling.
I'm 100% sure that we haven't found half of it yet. And you can see that the industry, they are believing also that we should have seismic in many years to come. They are building vessels like never before. And we are shooting now in the same area as we did 20 years ago, because there is new technology and to get the better data, and you are more safe that once you get the platform to drill that you will find something.
We try to reassure ourselves the best we can on the future of this job, in spite of the predicted shortage of oil and the price of oil, which is skyrocketing in New York. The Geo Challenger, which is the first link in the oil business, we can dig deeper and deeper for oil through sedimentary strata. In the future, all this will have a price. We now have to leave the engineers of the Geo Challenger, who are busy making up for lost time, because we've got other missions to check on the other side of the Atlantic. We are a few cables lengths away from Manhattan, in the Long Island Sound, where surprising works are about to start in a few hours. On the pilot boat, here's Patrick Bart, one of the managers and ship owners of the Skagerrak. The biggest cable ship in the world has finally arrived from Norway. The Skagerrak belongs to a French group, which holds a leading position in the manufacturing and the laying of all kinds of cables.
Today we're in New York, and in 3 months we'll be in Abu Dhabi, and in a year we'll be in China. We sail every sea.
This time, the mission of the crew of the Skagerrak is to replace the old underwater cables which connect Long Island Power Station to a small city in Connecticut. There are 19 kilometers of electric cable buried in the seabed. One small detail, the cables will have to go through a small island before they can reach dry land.
In fact, originally the Skagerrak was a barge which was converted about 30 years ago by fitting a motorized 7,000-ton revolving platform, turning it into a real cable ship. It was modified to lay one of the first underwater cables in the North Sea in the Skagerrak Strait, hence its name.
The laying of the cables is about to start in a few hours. The crew is getting ready in the hold of the Skagerrak.
The first time I saw it was almost 4 years ago, and it looked like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was a very strange ship to me. I didn't think it looked very nice. Like, is it a little ugly or is it just me? But you kind of, it is a ship with a soul. So you kind of grow fond of it, and you get used to it with all its strange ways to walk and everything. But once you learn to know the Skagerrak, you love her.
Based in Oslo, the Norwegian capital, Nina is one of the only women on board. However, she takes part in every decision made regarding the laying of the underwater cables. In the meantime, Patrick Bart is still inspecting the ship. The works that have just started are estimated at 80 million euros. Since their American clients are very detail-oriented, the Skagerrak crew cannot make a mistake.
Can you move the vessel 6 meters astern?
This is the cockpit of the Capjet. It's the robot you can see at the bottom of the sea on the top right screen. At the moment, it's on the cable, and it's digging a 2-meter deep trench at the bottom, of which will be laid the cable in order to protect it. The Capjet moves forward and is piloted by these two operators. Skagerrak places itself automatically according to the Capjet, thanks to a wave system fitted on the robot, which enables the Skagerrak to know where it is any time. Progress is rather slow, but it's entirely automated. So in fact, by making the Capjet move forward, two operators also make the Skagerrak advance.
In the water, there are several lunar vehicles which search for possible obstacles. With all the stones, mud, pollution, and lobster pots in the Long Island Sound, the operators of the Skagerrak often have to pull their strange machine up to clean it. After a week's work, the first cable is unwound and buried, but now there's a trickier operation in progress on the rear deck. Meanwhile, in Scotland, Callum is about to leave the ship to go to another lighthouse on a small island, which is famous for its whiskey distilleries.
Today we've got one lift to go ashore to Rinzavili Lighthouse. Just a simple piece of machinery, a dehumidifier, and folk will come from ashore and set it all up. But our mission is just to put it ashore, land it, the helicopter will undersling it, we'll disconnect it, put it into the building, and then come away. That's the lighthouse we're going to. Rinzavili. This key should open up all the padlocks for all the lighthouses. Just one single master key, all the padlocks are the same, hopefully. Houston, we have a problem. No, it's okay.
Every light is important, but this one is particularly important because it is a major landfall for traffic coming in from the Atlantic. This light was automated back in the 1980s. And before that, the lighthouse would be manned by a principal lighthouse keeper and two assistant light keepers, and they would have lived in the cottages at the side of the lighthouse down below with their families. One of their main jobs would have been to keep the lens clean.
Most Scottish lighthouses were automated at the end of the 80s. Since then, each lighthouse is visited once or twice a year by the sailors of the Pharos. When a breakdown is detected or when a light goes off, engineers and electricians are sent on the spot as quickly as possible, usually by helicopter.
At that time, the old ships were built for lighthouse reliefs, when all the lighthouse keepers used to be on the lighthouses, and the ship would go out to the lighthouse, very fine-lined, good sea ships, and all the work would be by boat, and they would lower the boat with the lighthouse keeper, take the lighthouse keeper into the lighthouse and come back with for his duty period, and take the one who's going on leave back to the ship. And this sounded to me like a job that I would like to do. It was interesting and it was exciting, with being in small boat work and this quite rough weather sometimes, because always the lighthouse keeper, he would want to go home no matter what the weather was like.
This time, the Pharos is heading west. It's getting dark, and the crew is looking for a beam of light. For sailors, a white light means the course is clear and that there's no reef ahead. However, when the light turns red, there is an element of danger.
The computer is holding the ship in position until it's dark enough for us to sector the light and just check that the bearing is correct.
Five and a half. 356 and a half. Right at 357 and a half.
We provide a service for the safety of all mariners, for the safety of all users of the sea. And if we don't do our job, then we're not confident they're going to have the safety at sea. Because for all the modern navigation systems, if they fail with a computer blip, you still need to get the charts out, you still need to take your bearings and know where you are. And without our lights, people wouldn't be able to do that.
It's still pitch black on the Sea of the Hebrides, while the sun is rising over Egypt. For the past few months, on each seismic ship, there has been a solitary crew member. He's a sort of watch hired by the oilmen, as underwater explosions generated by this kind of ship can be dangerous for the wildlife around it, and especially for sea mammals.
My job aboard is to be sure that there are no animals around before the start of the guns, and to implement the guidelines to minimize the acoustical disturbance from the seismic survey. If I detect an animal in the 30 minutes before the start of the guns, I must delay the soft start for at least 20 minutes since animal leave the area. So it's the only occasion when I can stop. Or in the case of turtles, I can ask them to stop for 6 shots to give them time to be on a safe zone.
For the crew on watch, it's time for a last check in the sea to make sure everything has gone back to normal and that the underwater firing can start again. With an underwater camera, the mechanics of the Geo Challenger weave dangerously between the submerged cables. They're looking for a defect. But today, there's nothing to report. Exceptionally, the crew will be able to get their mail, but they will have to get it from one of the two tugboats which guard and take care of the supplying of the Geo Challenger.
From the moment that they decide, yes, we're going to go and drill a hole and find oil and gas, until you're able to actually tank it in your car, well, the price is maybe $10 billion, and it takes up to 10 years. From the very first decision of, yes, we are going to look for oil and gas in this area, until you're able to put it in your car, it can take up to 10 years, and $10 billion is probably a cost that's not too far off.
The seismic crews went back to normal again a few hours ago. The powerful computers have taken over from the men. The pressure is therefore not as strong on the Geo Challenger. What are the scientists and these engineers thinking about? Probably about their next night out on the Champs-Élysées, thanks to Egyptian oil. On the east coast of the United States, a more difficult operation is in progress on the Skagerrak. A second cable is about to get back onto dry land.
Yeah, we have 700 floats that we're going to use to float the cable out, and it's a challenge to get all the floats in a smooth speed. Once the cable starts moving, it's very consuming for labor, so we need all hands on deck to get the operation going as smoothly as possible without stopping, so the cable can just continue, so we don't have to stop because of this. So we need many people on deck, so we have some Americans that are helping us as well, because we're not enough manpower here on deck ourselves to do it. So as you can see, there are many people on deck, and it's a little bit chaotic, but once we get started, it's everything is going very smoothly and very good.
Time goes by. Meter by meter, the device is on its way towards the shore. Part of the Skagerrak crew is on the deck to follow the movement of the cable. Others are at water level to make sure the floats are properly tied. At this stage, the cable mustn't sink. Several small motorboats are moored to the underwater cable to counter tidal currents.
As far as telecommunications are concerned, there are thousands of kilometers of cables laid at the bottom of the sea. For example, there are 7 transatlantic cables. Several cables connect Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and all that represents thousands of kilometers. However, there aren't as many cables that carry electric power, but they are much bigger. Nowadays, there are about 5,000 kilometers of electric cables laid at the bottom of the sea.
Slowly but surely, the long black snake is making its way toward a tiny island, or at least for the moment.
We have to keep a vigilant eye out for what we can find at the bottom of the sea, and beware of all kinds of different containers lying there. Don't create any pollution. There is permanent surveillance from authorities who are on the Skagerrak during the laying and the production. Moreover, special units circle the ship and constantly take sea samples to make sure there is no pollution.
On the cable boat, the crew can soon relax a bit.
We are floating the cable end over to the island, where divers will receive it and remove the floats. And the cable will go over the island and over to that barge you see over there on the right side. And then we will float out maybe 2.5 kilometers of cable, and all that will be spooled on board the barge. So it's quite a lot of cable being spooled. And when we're done with that, the cable will continue to install, or the barge will continue to install the cable across the sound, because on the inside of the island it's too shallow for the Skagerrak to get in.
Once the cable is pulled onto the island, there is still another 10 hours work to finally join the mainland. It's very cold. It's late, but on the shore and on the Skagerrak, the crews are relieved. Within the next 3 months, a power line will link Long Island to Connecticut once again.
Accommodation is not very good, but people like this ship. They like to work here, and they're very pleased. Out of 48 cabins, there are only 4 cabins with own toilet and shower. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is that the people like their work. They like the social way it is on board. Yeah, I like this ship very much. It's a good old lady.
In the next 5 years, there will be as many cables laid at the bottom of the seas as in the last 50 years. Captain Gutgorn and his high-tech old lady will therefore not be retiring just yet. In Scotland, it's been 4 days since the last attempt to land at the Skagerrak lighthouse. The Pharos crew is under great pressure because the storm is still going strong. So far, the batteries are still going strong, but this morning, in the headquarters of the lighthouses and beacons in Edinburgh, there is bad news. The worst is to be feared. There is no way this lighthouse can go off. The orders are clear. They must find a way to get out there. However, on the ship, The Coast Guard's radio is forecasting another depression with force 10 winds. The ship, therefore, finds shelter in a bay, and the helicopter takes off from the foredeck. Rob, the pilot, is going to attempt the impossible by dropping 2 technicians there to repair the breakdown.
Many years ago, this is maybe 30 years ago, on not too rough a day, on quite a calm day, I'm told, an Atlantic roller came in and smashed into some cliffs and threw up a lot of water, and it hit the helicopter and it just put it over the edge of the helipad, and so they lost the helicopter. So you've got to be very careful there. You can't shut the machine down, you can't leave it, you keep the rotors running, buoys out, doors shut, and up as quickly as possible.
Mission accomplished. The 2 lighthouse and beacon engineers will probably spend several days in the Skagerrak lighthouse to repair the breakdown. On the Pharos, the team is relieved.
Hello, my friend. How are you doing? Did you have a good leave?
Good chips, yeah.
Chips again.
And burgers at the moment.
How am I going to lose weight with this?
Oh, no, I'm the same.
When you're going home, if you've been away and you're in ship life, going back home, you need to try and change and get back into the home life way of things and get used to just the wife bossing you about more than like when you're here. You kind of suit yourself, you know. You're like a bachelor again, living in a 1-bedroom flat.
I'll go with the sheep. Good. You're working for me. You go ahead. You go right ahead. There's anything I enjoy more than making sheep or anything.
After 2 weeks of sailing on the Sea of the Hebrides, the Pharos is finally on its way back to the port of Oban. Callum, the boatswain, is about to go home for the night. His crew will be waiting for him, just like his wife is right now. We spent a few weeks sailing on these impressive structures. Days and nights in the lives of these crew, who once they've set foot on their ship, stop counting the hours spent on board. Some of them consider it a privilege to work on these sea giants, but for others, this life on ship is full of sacrifices. But all of them have the same pride. They work on the biggest, most powerful, and most modern ships in the world,